I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about Tibetan thangka painting and my process. To start with, I wanted you to know that this is a long tradition of traditional painting from Tibet and in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And because of that, I need to explain a little bit about who I am in that regards. I've been practicing Buddhism for 40 years, and 34 years of that was in the tradition of Tibetan Buddhism after I met my root guru, Tara Tulku. And after he passed, I've had other teachers, Denma Rinpoche, and occasionally have been lucky enough to take teachings from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And these teachers basically gave me the okay to do the Tibetan thangka painting. It's a sacred tradition of iconic art, and they use sacred proportional grid for each of the images that is said to come from the time of the Buddha, and that Tibetan artists and other artists have been using since that time period over the millennia. So every time I do a Tibetan thangka painting, I have to find the grid. That's the first thing after I find the images. And the way this particular thangka started, which is of Parnashavari, she's a female Buddha that's associated with eliminating pandemics. So very appropriate to the times. I first heard about her on Facebook, actually. I was on Sakyuje Rinpoche, one of my teacher's sites, and he had a prayer to her and a mantra to the Buddha Parnashavari that was supposed to help with boosting our immune system and inner strength, and also to pacify the pandemic. So it was a wonderful thing to be able to do, to give me something to do during this time of quarantine and whatever, to feel like I might be helping. Because when we do these thangka paintings, they're like, they're kind of like doorways into another dimension. In this case, a very high energy spiritual dimension of the Buddha, and that can cause transformation in people just upon seeing them, and also for the artist upon making them. So it's really very beneficial for me too, as well as feeling like it's a compassionate action for the world, which might sound grandiose, but there it is anyway. And after starting to do the mantra, I got this idea that I wanted to do a thangka painting of her, because I was just finishing another thangka that's on this site of Shakyamuni Buddha, teaching the Lotus Sutra on Vulture Peak, and I thought, gosh, it would be so wonderful to do one of her. So I started looking at images, and at those early stages of the virus in the United States, there were just a few images out there. There weren't that many, maybe 3 or 4. I found a couple really beautiful old ones on the Rubin, which the Rubin Museum, which later became the focus for the drawing that I'm doing, Parnashavari. And then I took all my books. I have several books that have the traditional Tibetan thangka painting grids of them, and started looking through them to try and find a grid that was appropriate to Parnashavari, and there wasn't anything there. There were some that had close elements, like in some of the dancing female dakinis, but none of them had the exact thing. And so I realized that this was one of those cases where I was going to have to recreate the grid. So I printed off one of the old thangkas from it was from the 18th century on the Rubin Museum site, and I recreated the grid. I won't go into great detail about how I do that, but it took 2 days and of intensive work to try and do that. And I've done it in the past, so it wasn't totally new experience to me. And that was the basis of this painting. And also, lots of times when you're doing a thangka painting, you're asked to recreate something that's been done in the past. And then you get to have a little bit of creativity in the surrounding imagery and the landscape and the other beings that are included in there. Sometimes when I have a commission to do a thangka, people want it exactly like the thangka that from the 16th century, 17th century, whatever, and I do that. That's fine with me, as close as I can. But in this case, I was just doing this on my own, so I got to choose more or less what I was going to do. And in the meantime, I had found a sadhana by a teacher from another tradition that included Garudas in it, which is like a radiant rainbow-colored eagle that's in the Buddhist tradition, but also very, very ancient, back into ancient India and so forth times, as in all sorts of forms. And I thought I might integrate the Garuda into this thangka, because in the sadhana, the Garuda is actually the one that is consuming the disease, the coronavirus, because the Garuda is known as indestructible. So that's why I wanted to put that in there. And then what happened was that I got an initiation. I was so lucky, by Zachuji Rinpoche, a group of us, into, by Zoom, on the internet during the quarantine, on Parnashavari. And so one of the ways that I had to choose was to try and make the image follow as closely as possible the sadhana that he gave us. And so this is where things get a little strange, because Parnashavari has three faces, yellow in the center, red and white. Well, sometimes red is on the right side, sometimes the white is on the left side, and sometimes it's vice versa. Sometimes one knee is down on the earth, and sometimes the other knee is down in the earth. So once again, I found an image that followed really closely on the Rubin Museum site, what the sadhana portrayed. This is one of the images that I found at the Rubin Museum, and is the one that is the main image that I used for my drawing. I basically used the body and the position of the leaves and the position of her knee down, right knee down, and left knee in kind of a semi-dancing position as that part of the thangka. And then another one that I used from the Rubin was this one, which I really loved a lot. Again, both of them are from the 18th century. And I love the face and the hands, the position of the hands, the drawing of the hands and the feet in this one. And so that's what I used in the painting. I tried to bring together the most beautiful elements possible in this painting, and still have it be correct in terms of the sadhana. And then, more recently I found this lovely little image. There was a detail in the painting at the Victoria Albert Museum, and on this one you'll notice that the knee and her faces are reversed. The knees and her faces are reversed on the sides, the white and the red faces, and the right and the left knee, which is kind of interesting. Again, from the same time period, 18th century, so 1700s. And there are many, many images now of Parnashavari out there, and some of them contemporary, not so many still of the old ones. So if anybody finds any that they'd like to share with me, I'd love to see them. Thank you. Oh, I was going to show you this is the drawing. So that was the first part, and then I drew out my grid, and on this piece of 22 by 30 Diarsha's watercolor paper. Traditionally, Tibetans use paper or cloth, and they do them on murals. There's all sorts of ways that they do them, but I have chosen to do the 100% rag, which is almost like doing it on cloth, watercolor paper, and using HB pencil and eraser and various T-squares and triangles and architectural tools to measure out and do the grid. And then once that's done on this, I did it on the image that I printed off, then I have to transfer it onto the paper. And so I did that. And then I had to decide what I was going to do for the landscape. Well, within this initiation, Zachuji Rinpoche had said that her mandala is the forest. she's surrounded by a forest, and I came to find out that she's known as the ancient goddess of the forest in India, or an ancient tribal woman from the Savari tribe, or Savara, which is her name's come from. Leaf clad, which is where the Parna part of her name comes from, and so that gave me a lot of inspiration for doing the background. So it started out just being a background with some Garudas, but then it ended up having dragons and tigers and kinaras and snow lions and makaras and various other creatures mixed into the plants and the trees and the water. So that's the first part, what I wanted to tell you. We'll come back a little later as I do the painting and add in some other elements, so you get to actually see the painting process.